And we're live. Welcome back to another Corona Geek here where we talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. I'm your host, Charles McKeever. And today we're going to talk about a whole host of things. We've got a full house in the house, and we're going to talk about touch coalescing, what is it, not 3D rings, but what is that thing called?
Translucent ring? Yeah.
Okay.
I'll go more into it in a minute. But yeah, we got a request for an interesting timer ring. We've already done timers in the past, but this one was an interesting challenge.
Well, I'm glad Jason's on the call with us because it looked very similar to his library, but I think there's some nuances there that you guys can kind of shed some light on.
I'm curious to see it. It sounds like an improvement, and mine admittedly still has some weird issues with if you're using dynamic content scaling. So I'll be curious to see.
Cool. Well, we've got that. We've got saving data using JSON, possibly doing button states. I don't know. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, and we may even split it up into two shows, but we'll get to as much as we can this week. On the panel with us is Dr. Brian Burton down in Abilene. Staying high and dry and trying not to be washed away by the rain here in Texas. Joining us also is Ed Marina from RoamingGamer.com.
Yeah, that crazy guy.
Eric Kincaid is joining us as well from, is it Lava Level? LavaLevel.com? I think so. Yeah, probably got his mute on. Also joining us is Jason Schroeder from JasonSchroeder.com. And then joining us also is Steven. Steven, do you have a domain?
ShibalbaStudios.com.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't remember it. Okay, cool. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. What's that?
It's a Mayan word.
It's a Mayan word. That's right. That's right. I have a hard time hanging on to my Mayan vocabulary.
I think Jason has pretty much got us on the being able to remember the domain. What's your domain? It's my name.
Yeah.
I can remember.
Pretty easy. Yeah, right.
How do you spell that? 2 G's or 1 G?
Well, we've got a couple of announcements here, and then I know that some people on the panel have announcements, so I want to get right to those. But if you didn't get a chance to see last week's show, we recorded Corona Geek 143, which you can find over at youtube.com/Corona Geek. We talked with Caleb Place, who is the developer of CBEffects. Now, if you haven't heard this guy's backstory, you definitely need to watch that show. I'll give you a little sneak preview, and that is that he started programming when he was 12. He's 15 now. He's created an entire particle effects library and shared it out with the community. He's actually created several different libraries that are vastly impressive. So, if you have a chance, go watch that and be inspired by his story. It's really a testament to the fact that you don't have to be a nuclear powered pocket protector or slide rule or whatever generation of vernacular you understand to do these types of things. I mean, he has taught himself the algebra that he needed for the particle effects library, and he has picked up programming and just taught himself everything. So you can do the same thing. So go watch his story. It's really very inspirational. Also very inspirational is this competition, this month's May Corona Geek Games competition. I tell you what, Jason, I'm just going to declare you the winner.
Woohoo!
As far as I understand, 526 is the high score. I think that's the last thing.
It's a dubious honor.
It's a dubious honor. I tell you what, you first of all, you blew away everybody by beating your own score, by going and posting repeatedly over and over again your best score, beating yourself each time, and then Luis Garcia jumped in there and started giving you a run for the money, and I think he came in at like 299 at one point or 298, and then you came in at like 324, and then he came in at 499 or something, and then next thing you know, you're posting 526. So you two were going at it head to head. So congratulations to Luis. Thank you for that, and for giving Jason such a run for his money. But you have earned it, my friend.
Well, thank you, and thanks, Luis. That was fun. It was actually fun to sort of feel like there was a little bit of back and forth there.
Yeah, I felt that as well. I was like, it was amazing. And I tell you what, I don't know if you noticed the screenshots. I know you did, Jason, because you gave us this tip. But all of your screenshots were on iPad, and all of his screenshots were on the phone.
Which, in my mind, makes him more impressive. I tried it on my phone, and it was a bigger target on the iPad. It was easier for me to sort of line those things up. So good on him. I don't know.
You don't know how he did it. Well,
I'll take the win, but
I didn't. You mentioned it in one of the previous Hangouts, and I didn't say anything because I was like, that's kind of your secret sauce. So I'm not going to share it. If you haven't watched the show, you just kind of you don't know. But I figured that was what was going on there. But anyway, congratulations to both you guys. That was incredible high scores. I didn't even think I thought we'd probably get somebody about 50, maybe 60. Not 526. So that's Boom Dots. We played that for May. I don't have another game yet. I'll post it later today. But yeah, so Jason has won himself a $50 gift card, which I'm sure amounts to about a penny per hour of his time.
Not that bad, but I'll say I'm fortunate to have usually on average about 90 minutes in the subway a day. So. Yeah.
I tell you what. Here's what we'll do.
Here's
what we'll do. You give me $50 and we'll just call it even.
Hey, Charles.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the next game, which you have not selected yet, what we're looking for basically is games that are on both iOS and Android, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. Because we want people to be able to play it on all platforms.
Yeah, we want as much participation as possible. Yeah, and if it's on Windows Phone as well, that's great. But not.
Right.
Is free or freemium a requirement for it?
Not necessarily, but of course, it's having to pay for something is a friction point. So we're just kind of like, well, if it can be free, that's cool too. But I think we played big games before.
I'm a huge fan of Alive, which is a Corona made game, but I think it's 99 cents. It's on Android and iOS.
Alive?
Yeah, it's by the guys. Something Dog. They're out of the UK. I can't think of their.
Rag Dog? No, not Rag Dog. What's I know what you're talking about.
Big Dog? Stinky Dog?
No. Then their first game, they're a Corona shop, and their first game was. I can't. Okay, I'm just gonna have to look at my phone because it was like orange colored, and it was.
What we can do is we can play that one, and then if we have a secondary, then we can put that up. Well, I think what that does is just kind of gives people a free option and a paid option, and then they can just pick whatever they want.
Laser Dog, that's the name of it. So
Laser Dog.
If anybody watching has not played their games, they make beautiful, really great mobile designed games. I feel like they're really making something that is ideal on a mobile setting, and they're doing it in Corona, and their stuff isn't fantastic.
Oh yeah,
so.
They did Alone.
Yeah, that's the one I was suggesting.
That's the one. You made Alone.
And they got some decent love from Apple on that.
I got it when it was free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice one, and when we did the desktop Corona desktop support demo, Alone was one of those. So if you haven't seen that, go to youtube.com/Corona Geek and check out the desktop demos. They're there. They're pretty cool.
I like how they just side topic here. I like how they took the one-touch input concept, but the swiping really, and they it's not linear, so more is really a lot more.
Yeah.
You got to play it, but they did a real good job of balancing the input versus the response on the ship, how you steer.
Yeah, it's weird mix of like an endless runner with feels like Gradius, for the old NES a little bit in terms of its aesthetic.
I think you're in the Wayback Machine now. People will be like, Gradius? What's that? Was that an arcade game? Where are you from? NES.
Oh well, at least people remember what arcades were. Another 5 years, it'll be like, what's this arcade you speak of?
That's
right. No,
they
get revived by people making arcade cabinets out of like iPads and stuff, though.
Yeah.
I'm still of the mindset. I know everybody has a network-connected console these days, but I'm still of the mindset that there's a market for some sort of place that you can go, like an arcade, I guess, but that has big, comfy chairs and big screen TVs and kicking speakers and all this other stuff, and people can just go and play. console games and stuff, and but have them sort of bigger than life. I haven't seen that. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, except you'd have to get people to bring their own damn controllers, because otherwise your controllers would all be wrecked.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's the part that kind of always trips me up is how do you manage the controllers and how do you manage logging into people's accounts?
You could do a checkout system where people go to the desk and they check out the controller and they wreck it while they're using it. They pay for it.
Yeah, it's true. And then how would you handle logins? People logging in their accounts so they can use their gamer tags and all that kind of stuff like that. It just seems like that part would be an administrative hassle. But if you could work that out, I think it would be really cool. Just make some places.
Your own idea down there, Charles.
Yeah, well, that's what we do, right? We come up with ideas and we find reasons not to do them.
Is Barcade a thing across the country? It's a thing here in New York. There's a couple of them. And it's arcade cabinets, but it's a bar. So you can get a pitcher of beer with your buddies, and it's just loaded with arcade cabinets from the 80s and 90s, and everything's a quarter.
Yeah, we have that here in Austin. It's you go and you get the beer, and then you just don't play the game. Well, cool. That would be very cool. So, well, let's go because we got some other announcements. I want to remind everybody that on Udemy they can find Daniel Williams' course that is called Game Development Using Corona SDK in 2015 with ASO and ads, which I think is a genius title because it pretty much nails down all the keywords. But you can use Corona Geek to take the course for $9, which is a steal. Basically, Daniel goes through an entire game from beginning to end. And it's ninjas versus pirates, and he puts in everything at the end to get you help you get published in the store and have ads in your game and all that kind of stuff like that. So if you're looking sort of for an end-to-end example of something in a video format, they'll walk you through. Definitely recommend that you check the show notes and use the coupon code Corona Geek. We don't get anything off of it. We're just Daniel was just nice enough to give us a coupon code for the show, and that just get that for $9 and everybody wins, I think. So go check that out. Now, who's got announcements here on the show? I know that we've got a couple, maybe one, definitely. Eric, I think you wanted to say something. Hold on, we're working on audio. Okay, there's video in a way.
Oh, you mean like right now? You want me to say something?
Yeah.
I'm live. I'm on. Okay, good.
And now.
So I'm really pleased right now. Questlord has hit 140,000 downloads.
Wow.
And
awesome.
Which is pretty awesome. Yeah, I'm quite pleased. Of course, all those weren't purchased. I was lucky enough to be free app of the day, and that got me like about 100,000 of them, which is great. I mean, for a paid app, you can't ask for anything better. And Questlord 2 has been under development for like 2 years now, and is looking for a fall release. So Questlord 2 coming soon. Can't wait. And you reminded me earlier. I'm sorry, the guy in the car. Oh.
Jason.
Yeah. Did you have something? Did you want to add something?
Oh no, just saying.
Oh, I thought you said that. So anyway, the whole deal with that is pretty cool. So Ship Jam, you reminded me of Ship Jam.
Yeah, that the competition to kind of ship something in before the end of the end of the year.
Yeah, we had done that, and basically it was really cool. Me and Laura came up with that idea because we have so many games that we make with Corona that are just sitting around, and we figured it'd be great to have them actually ship like on a real short time period. And I did this for it, and I thought it was pretty cool. Can you see my screen, or is it just the guy in the car and you?
No, we can see you. We can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Because I don't know if it's updating. So this is Pixel Camera, right? And the reason I'm showing it right now is because, or showing it like this, is because it doesn't really work on emulator, because it's an actual camera thing. See how you can see the screen again, but it's got a really cool it's basically the filter effects, like all the filter effects of Corona on the actual on the camera image as it comes in, which is pretty nice because I did like a thing where you can rotate the screen.
This is out.
Rotates?
Is this out?
This has been out since the ship jam was going down.
What's the name again?
Pixel Camera. 2 words, not like Questlord. Pixel Camera. And you know what? There's a lot better Pixel Camera-esque type apps out there, but you know, mine's free, and I wanted to try it with ads. And one of the hardest things was making the screen rotate, like to any angle. You know, and looking back on this, I don't know if I need it for a Pixel Camera or for a camera app, but it was really fun doing that. See how it rotates?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting because everything was set up in a table to have 4 different coordinate sets. But then I figured out for a lot of it, I only needed 2 different coordinate sets because it would match. So I thought that was pretty fun. I'm not sure if I'm going to do another app where you can actually flip the app and have it rotate again, though, because it lost a lot of things. But Pixel Camera, it's really cool. Check it out.
Okay.
And Questlord 1, 150,000 downloads. And Questlord 2 is coming out. Questlord 1's on sale right now. Probably going to be my last sale I have for Questlord until Questlord 2 has a sale. So this is going to be the last sale for Questlord in a long time.
Well, excellent.
9 cents.
If anybody's listening and hasn't already, go check out questlord.com. That's where you can find all the downloads for the game. And it's how would you describe it, Eric? An old school dungeon.
Yeah, it's an old school dungeon crawler, but it's kind of unique in the fact that it's a lot like this game called Dungeon Master, or Eye of the Beholder, or those games back in the day, because it uses a system of page flipping. In Questlord 1, I only page flip enough, like just a small amount of frames as they go down this, to represent where you are. In Questlord 2, the graphics are twice as pixelated, which means I doubled them. Yeah, there's Questlord 1. There's the old goat. So yeah, check that stuff out. And this is a really exciting time right now. I'm showing off a lot of stuff on my Twitter page and stuff. And I'm always in the Corona IRC channel. And I encourage more people to join the Corona IRC channel.
Yeah, you can find that at coronalabs.com/IRC. It takes you right to the page where you can get all the details. You can join IRC via a web client. You don't have to have anything local on your machine if you're not already set up. And there's a bunch of great people in the IRC channels for sure. Eric being, of course, one of them.
Shucks. You were talking about that. You were talking about that young man that you interviewed. Well, one of our guys when Corona started. When I got into Corona like three years ago or so, he was like not able to drive, right? But now he's going to go to. He's going to college. He's going to a great college, and he's got like 2 apps under his belt already. So it is amazing, and I come from the days of 1980s, but I still was a teenage programmer, and it is really nice to be able to share code bits and stuff with people without having to be like, oh no, well, I contract $200 an hour to do code for Corona or anything like that. Everyone's there and real friendly and shares code and shows things and stuff. And so yeah, if you're a Corona developer, what are you doing not on IRC? Get on IRC.
Yeah. Somebody asked that the other day. I said, is there a chat or is there something besides the forums? And I said, well, there's the IRC. Go check it out.
Right.
Well, okay. Well, good. We'll put a link to Pixel Camera in the show notes. I like the style of it. If you have a link, put it in the chat if you would mind.
I sure will. And one thing about it, Pixel Camera is it's gonna I'm gonna add more stuff to it. Like I'm gonna add the ability to put stickers on it and frames and do more social stuff with it. That's kind of the direction of it. It's not as high tech as my friend out in England has a camera device that shows you if you can put it in Atari mode, Apple II mode, and all that stuff. But so I'm going to actually put a link to his app in my app. Just kind of some interesting cross-platform promotion stuff. But that's about it. Thanks.
Okay.
Hey, your download numbers one more time.
Download numbers. 150,000 downloads.
There we go.
I wasn't ready earlier. I got to get that ready for good announcements, man.
Yeah, right.
I feel like we're on the morning drive zoo crew here now.
Perfect. Hey, did you guys see the post that Jen Lewis shared on Facebook? She was saying that there's a Commodore 64 programming course out there. you can sign up and take it, and it's
Just in time.
yeah.
Oh,
But I thought that was pretty cool because it actually is going to take you through some of the the concepts of programming Commodore 64 for games, and I thought,
What did you write that in? I did basic programming
Yeah.
on Commodore back in the 80s, but what would you have written in to compile something?
I from all the screenshots, I think it's all in basic.
Wow.
It's all going to be basic. Yeah. Now I don't know, if it'll be compiled into anything. I mean, I don't know. I think it's just the love of the concepts and the technology, and you're using an emulator, so you don't have to actually have the physical hardware. But yeah, I was amazed at some of the stuff that they showed that you'll be building as part of the course. So I'll put a link in the show notes to it. But I thought it was fun. I thought it was kind of cool. I've always been a big fan of Commodore 64.
Hands on a working Commodore 64 at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you can get them, but it's like getting a hold of a vintage, vintage Mac.
So Charles, you'll know what I say when I say comma 8, comma 1 is like in my DNA at this point.
Right. Yeah, that and the VIC-20. There was a guy down the street from me who had a VIC-20, and then at one point, I was fortunate enough to spend some time with the Commodore 64, so I loved it, just loved it. So anyway, and of course the TRS-80 was always the the coveted, never seen but always coveted device. All right, well, hey, that's good. Nobody else got any announcements? Anybody? Hey, thanks for joining us, Sergey. See you there you are. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get into today's topic. Ed, I know you've got a lot of stuff to cover, and I don't want to take up too much time.
Okay, I'm getting the screen up there. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, what are we going to talk about first? What do you want to do first?
All right, well, we got 3 different things we can talk about. So what I'd like to do is talk about coalescing first, and then really quick just give a demo of the timer dial, my answer to the question that was posited, and then go into library extensions, because I think that one will overlap.
Okay, are you going to tell us what touch coalescing is?
It's a fancy word for not doing too much work in any one frame. That's what it is.
Okay.
Coalescing literally is to take data. I can't even give you a good literal definition.
I know what collating is. Like a copier collates, documents together. Is that similar?
No. Yeah, it's got the same root word.
No.
No. All right. So, we lost Charles. He's not interested anymore.
I'm here.
Okay. So, what was that?
Oh, sorry. My phone rang.
Okay, good. So in a nutshell, the problem is that people will write a touch listener for their games, and then they'll do some kind of heavy-duty calculation in the touch listener, not realizing that when a person touches an object and drags their finger, that they may get multiple move events in one frame. So every time a move event is captured, it gets processed, executes some code. And so what can happen is if you've got some heavy-duty calculations going on inside the move portion of your touch listener, you can bog your game down. So a lot of times people will see like they're doing something with like a virtual joystick on their screen or something like that, and it responds to every single move of the finger, and the user is moving their finger quickly, and it does like 10 operations in one frame where it only needed to do 1. So 9 wasted operations, 1 that actually did something useful. So touch coalescing is just a fancy way of saying, let's take this wasteful extra work that's getting done in the move portion of the event and limit it to once per frame so that you achieve what you're trying to achieve, but you're not wasting work cycles doing it. So to demonstrate this, I've made an application. I should have mentioned early on, when we get done with the show, I'm going to commit this stuff to the Git, just like always, and I will send a link to Charles, and there will be links in the show notes for you to download the samples for this project, or for these projects. So in this case, what I've done is, can you see my screen okay?
Yes.
All right, let me see if I can make this a little bigger, actually. I wish I had one of these that fit my screen perfectly, but... ooh, okay, that's good enough. Okay, so what I've got here is I'm running the simulator, and I am doing a demonstration workload. So the first one, if you look in the code, it's the main Lua is just I set the buffer to no so that the output goes to the console right away. I get rid of the status bar. I load and start an FPS meter. That's one thing people listening to the show. This little thing you see right up here, it's just a quick and easy frame rate meter that if you
I'm
want
sorry,
something like that in your
how come
game.
this is higher than 60 FPS?
Sir?
I'm sorry, how come this is higher than 60 FPS?
That's just how it works in the simulator on Windows.
Okay.
Yeah. So, right. Okay.
More juice on the computer than on the mobile device.
No, it's just that it's not perfectly synchronized in the simulator. So if I change this down to 30, you'll see that it runs at about 33 or 34.
Okay.
So it's not exactly entirely accurate. For whatever reason, I've noticed that in the
It's
last
like
6 months.
10% higher.
Yeah, I
Not
noticed
even
this.
higher than 10.
Yeah, I've noticed this in the last 6 months or so that this has changed from. You'll see this in different releases. It's not locking in at 30 and 60, and to me, it's no big deal. But it's just something that you should note. When you run this on the device, it's fine. Okay, so where was I? I got to put it back up at 60 to demonstrate this. Okay, so the meter. Let's see, where was I? I load up the meter. You can extract this and use it in your own apps if you just want a rudimentary frame rate meter. What it does is when you load, it initializes for 2 or 3 seconds. It starts to gather data, and then it gives a running average over, I think, 2 or 3 seconds what the frame rate was. Because if you look at the frame rate from frame to frame, the number will be flipping all over the place. It won't be very useful. So I give you an average frame rate over the last 2 or 3 seconds. So you can see gradual changes in your frame rate, not immediate changes. And I paused it there. Let me reload it. And then main Lua, I require 1 of 3 different files. The first one's called No Work, and it's the example where I demonstrate the principle behind this app. And then I show you one that's doing work, and I show you what the bad thing is that happens when you don't coalesce. And then good is the same example code. All of them are the same, except bad does work, good also does work, but I coalesce to keep you from doing that work over and over. So let me demonstrate. This is a completely made-up example, purely to demonstrate the concept. So what occurs here is you run it, let it get going, and then if you click on the screen or the simulator and you move your mouse, this is what you should see. Now, it's probably a little bit hard to see it coming through the Google Play, but what's going on here is the screen should change colors randomly. The more you move your cursor, the more it changes colors. So it should change very rapidly between, I think it's 0.1 and 1.0 color range for each of the RGB color codes. So it's just a random value. So this is sort of like a visual feedback so that you know that if it's pulsing like this, that it's doing the job and it's not getting hung up. If we look at the code very briefly, what we've got here is at the top I require a module called common, and it's got a bunch of stuff in it like I calculate the width of the screen, or I just use a short code for the width. I get the center. I could just as well have used display content center X, but I like short codes, so I provided these things. Some other things like are we on the simulator or OS X? This is one of my files that I include in example projects that I give people, just so that I can set up a few useful variables for checking things, because oftentimes I'll answer a question that's relevant, and one answer it has to be done a certain way on Android, or a different way on Windows and or OS X, etc. So back to no work. The core of it here is the touch. Basically what it does is on the begin, it gets the time. On the move, it calculates a random RGB value, and it sets the background color, which is the object we're touching, to the RGB color. So again, you'll see color changes. Other than that, there's no work getting done in here. So the only thing that the move phase is doing is changing the color. If we switch over to the bad example, what we're going to do in here is everything's going to be the same, but it also requires this module called fake work, which is my fake workload to make it busy. And if we look at that module, there's two options. There's fake work run and fake work run 2, which I'm using the second one because that one expressed a little better visually. And all this does is I call a function and I pass in a number, or I could just call it without passing a number. If I do not pass a number, it will choose 1e to the 5th, which is just 1 with 5 zeros after it. I can type. So it's just shorthand notation for that number there. And it loops from 1 to the max count, and it adds a variable, count equals count plus 1, etc., etc., etc. And it takes the square root of the count. So the whole job it's doing is counting and calculating a square root. And the purpose of this is to have a fake workload that takes up a certain amount of time, and then we insert it into our bad touch listener. So if we look at the touch listener again, the workload is right here, and what it does is it calculates the random color code, sets the fill color, and at the beginning here, it does a fake run, and it does 5 times 1e to the 4, which is basically...
So this is...
iterations.
And this is happening each frame as we move.
Every time a move event occurs, this piece of code executes. And it also prints out to the console the timer and how long it's been since the last time the work was done. So let me undo this, and I'll show you what it looks like when you run it. I'll show you the console output. So let's go ahead and run it. Let it get going here. Okay, you can see now it got stuck on the brown. So I'm moving my mouse around, maybe a little hard to see that, and it's stuck. It's like it's just not keeping up. Now if I look at the console output, what you'll see here is that piece of code executed, and 4 milliseconds later executed, 4 milliseconds executed, and this is not good. The reason it's not good is because basically a frame at 60 frames per second is, and I know somebody's going to ask me why is the number climbing, and I will explain that in a minute. The frame time for 60 frames a second is approximately 16 milliseconds. So if you're coming in every 4 milliseconds and doing work, you're doing 4 pieces of work per frame. And you should not do that, because only the last one is going to take. It's everything up until that point, it's, in this case, my work is totally wasted. The end result I want here is to change the screen color, and it's doing some other things. So why would I need to change the screen color 4 times if I can just do it once per frame? Because I'm not going to see it anyways. So why did the frame rate climb way up to 70 frames per second? I've noticed that Corona does this interesting thing that when it gets over busy, so you're doing too much work in any one frame, that frame gets stuck in effect, and then you'll have this really weird thing, and I don't see any examples of it in here, where some frames will be almost 0 milliseconds long. It's like it goes in, it says, I can't do any work, and then it aborts. And then some will be extremely long, like 10, 20 milliseconds. So in this case, we're not seeing any of that occurring. Well, you can't really tell that here. But it's easier to see with my super meter, where you can see the visual paths. You know, I've got a graph. Mm-hmm. And what you'll see is occasional frames where the graph will peak way off the chart. And what that's telling you is in the frame before, there was too much work to do, and it couldn't get it done. So it's a little harder to express here, but what ends up happening is the frame rate temporarily climbs higher.
So basically, when you were moving the cursor around and you were saying it was getting hung up, and we were kind of just staying on one particular color, that's basically the representation of the work is being done in the background. Everything kind of grinds to a halt. We're seeing that one color, and then it doesn't change to the next color until the program's able to move on to the next frame.
That's right. It got stuck doing this work here,
yeah.
And the display just couldn't update. It wasn't able to do the update step.
Okay.
All right. So.
So what's the magic fix for this?
Yeah. So the magic fix for this is a very simple thing. Now, the code that you're going to get from me does it in a very naive way. And if you use SSK, there's a feature available to you that does it in a centralized location. But the principle behind this is very simple. What I do is I create a variable called last frame where I set, it's a frame counter, so it's going to go 0, 1, 2. It's just going to increment forever for every frame that executes. And then I create a enter frame listener, and so every frame, all it does is it takes the last frame and adds 1 to it. So every frame, this number is going to go up. 0, 1, 2, 3. So that's this code right here. The whole job of this piece of code is just to create a variable that increments on every frame. So if we keep that in mind, the next thing I do is in the touch listener, in the began phase, I take the object that I'm touching and I create a field called underbar last frame. You can call it anything you want. The job of this variable is to keep track of the last frame that the listener executed in. So because we're starting, I store the current last frame value. So let's just say it's 100. So I store 100 in this variable here. And then the next time this listener executes, the phase is either going to be moved or ended, in all likelihood. Those are the two most likely phases. So let's assume that it's moved. Let's say that they touch and they move their finger immediately, and they do it so fast that it hasn't actually changed to a new frame yet. What's going to happen is it's going to say, okay, the event is moved. Last frame, which is this variable up here, if it's not greater than my current last frame for this touch object, the one that's handling the touch, then just get out of here. So don't do anything. Just completely skip the rest of this work. However, if this variable is less than the current last frame, so let's say this was 101, it'll fall into it'll dive into the code. Immediately what we'll do is we'll update our counter on our object and say, keep track of the last frame you did work in is now 101, not 100. Do the work and fall out. It's purely a gatekeeper. And what this code is doing, in a nutshell, is saying, do not do more work than once per frame in the moved phase. You want to do the began work whenever it occurs. You want to do the ended work whenever it occurs. But don't do the moved work more than once per frame. Now, I realize that in some cases, the work that was done in moved is very important, and it could occur that you get a moved frame that is skipped and an ended in the same frame, and then you wouldn't get that important work. But people can merely update the way the structure of their touch to make sure that that last bit of work gets done. Typically, this is the simple layout like this is enough. And if we run this, we can demonstrate that no matter what I do, I can't force it to do work more frequently than the frame rate. Well, let me run it again. Hopefully I saved that. Yes, I did. And let's put this down here so you can see the output. And I'll move. And I'm moving. It's doing the same work, but everything's great.
I can't see it.
Yeah, you probably can't see it because Google, the Google Play camera is not synchronizing the frame rate at 60 frames with this.
No, I'm saying oh, there you go. Sorry, it didn't update desktops. Now I see it.
Yeah, it doesn't. This is not going to look. You have to run this yourself to see exactly what's going on. But that's why I gave the output here too. So you can see now that the frame rates occasionally are bad. Like we get one that's really short, or we get one that's really long. But for the most part, they're pretty even, and that's what we're looking for. Even is always better. Otherwise, the visual feedback you're going to get in your game is going to start to get jerky and laggy, and the whole thing, the experience just falls apart.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt you?
Certainly.
So you're saying that at the same time, at one frame, Corona can send 2 touch events to one object?
Absolutely. You can get 100 frames. You can get, as fast as they can move, you'll get all those touch events, and they all have to get processed within that frame.
Okay, but what happens if you set focus an object?
I'm sorry, what happens if I what an object?
Set focus. Display, get current stage, set focus, current object.
Okay, so if you do a set force, okay, what you're asking is the user moved their finger, you got 10 moved events, and they all get processed?
Because in my experience, I don't remember getting multiple touch events at the same frame. Maybe
well,
because
you definitely do. So run the example. It's very simple code. Run the no work. Run the bad example. They all print out. Okay, let me go back. I can easily prove that it does. Just.
I mean, maybe it doesn't happen if you have set focus. Maybe.
I'll explain why set force is fine. Give me a sec. So this was the no work case.
I think he's saying set focus. Set focus.
Yeah.
Oh, set focus. I'm pretty sure it also occurs in the case of set focus, but perhaps not. But the thing is you can't always guarantee that you're using set focus. That's only for specific use cases. Not everybody will create a game where they trap the focus to one object. Okay. Yeah, I thought you were talking about set force because set force still works. But set focus, I can't tell you.
Set force.
Which is it now? Physics set force or set focus?
No, he set focus. I think that's what he wants.
I don't know anything about set force in Corona.
Okay, well, shoot, I was all ready to answer that. I will anyway.
Okay, never mind.
Okay, well, the code's available. Download it, and you know what you can do is you can take the no work example and add the set focus and release in the end. I could probably do it here in just a moment, but do it, and I think you're still going to see numbers like this, where you got 0 delay between events, which means that it came right back in and did it again. What this is the delta between the last time the function got called, the onTouch function got called.
I would be more interested not in the time, but actually in the last time value, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and see if they actually the same during one event, let's say.
Sure. I mean, you can just do that. What you're saying is the event time. Yes?
No, I mean last time value.
That's what I'm getting. That timer is the last time value.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, last frame, I'm sorry. Which goes 1, 2, 3 on interframe listener.
You lost me. Are we talking about the time since the last execution or the frame since the last execution?
Frame.
Well, you can get that with the good example.
Yeah, last frame. I'm talking about last frame.
Okay, hold on. Give me 2 seconds. Did I run both? Yeah. Whoops. Don't run them both. These are the last frame numbers: 34, 35, 36, 37.
And can you show me this thing in the bad example?
I can. What I can do is just turn off the skipping. So I'll just turn off the skipping. There. It's no longer checking last frame to see if it should skip. Let me reload it. And now you
so
can
what are
see
you doing here, Ed?
99. I mean, these are all in the same frame. Look how bad that is. It's crazy.
This looks weird to me. I don't know.
All right, well, it's a very short code. I challenge you. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm not wrong, though, because I know that I've done this and reduced the workload, and it's like it's a night and day difference when you do
If it
this.
actually happens, I think that's actually a Corona bug or something, because it should be.
Actually, I considered that question. I'm glad we're having this conversation. So this whole question came up about, I don't know, 6 months ago in a forums post. And I think Rob weighed in on this, and then I gave the coalescing example. And the thing is that it's the end of the last move case that it would be a lot of work for Corona to say, okay, we just had a move event. We got to wait for the next frame. They have to hold on to that data, and it actually doesn't make sense for them not to pass on all the touch events. In some cases, you want every single touch event, even if it comes within the same frame. See, this is one of those things where, as an SDK, Corona is not getting in the way of the possibilities. They're not enforcing their rule set. And if they said we're only going to pass on touch events on every frame,
yeah, I see your point.
The whole thing would just collapse in terms of behavior and performance.
So it's like if application is almost having like one FPS and you draw some complex shape and it will draw the shape and not just one line.
Exactly. You know, there's a lot of folks who've lately been trying to do drawing apps where they draw a line made out of a bunch of dots or a bunch of segments, or they try to draw and then they want to make a valid polygon out of the points. And they're using an event listener like this, and they're getting multiple touch moves, and the distance between those moves is like 1 pixel. And then their algorithm for generating the polygon is taking a list of thousands of points and trying to make a polygon. And it fails. And if they simply did touch coalescing combined with a minimum distance between the dots, the vertices, most of their shapes would just work. But explaining this in the forums in a few words so that people understand it is very difficult.
Yeah, I think this is a good solid example that helps you visualize what the problem is and then what the potential fix is.
Yeah,
if it actually happens, you can write a wrapping touch event like on touch 1, for example, once. And what it would do is apply actual touch event, and we'll check for the frame number.
But that's basically the solution that I give here, except, like I said, with SSK, I centralized this so you don't have to do it. Like, for example, SSK comes with a bunch of one-touch, two-touch, one-liners that set up a one-touch event or a two-touch listener, so you can do two-touch games or joystick, and they all use touch coalescing out of the box, so that you don't have to think about it. But I'm going to distribute this code after the show, and I would be curious, if you have the time, if you would do the experiment with the
set focus.
Yeah, let's see what I can do.
Anything that I'm missing, but I'm 99.9% confident here that this is in fact a real thing that occurs.
Okay, let's go on.
Okay, so I'll shut up. Enough on that point here. Let me see. Let's do the dial because that's fun, and we're gonna be out of time for the other thing. So let me just close this and bring up the next window. Where are you?
So now on the dial, is that I know you created a video on this, and you're probably going to show us the example. Is that something that people will be able to get access to the source code, or what's the?
Yeah. So it's just a real simple piece of source code. I left it real basic so that it's the whole example here. The code that actually creates the dial, you see it right here on the screen, is it's less than 100 lines of code with spaces and blanks and not even very well formatted here. So let me just take out the extra blanks. And it's really quite straightforward if you just take it step by step. It's going to look complicated when people first look at it, when they get in here and go, oh, dial left, insert, dial right, half dial. I give up. Don't give up. Okay? Go through it step by step and think about what's going on, and I will explain what's going on. First of all, this is not a dynamically scalable dial in the sense that Jason's is. It is scalable, and it works perfectly well. I actually used a trick that I learned from Sergey to make that work, but it does not generate the masks dynamically. I have a single mask that I provided, and so that's part of this discussion, is you can change the mask on your own. If you use the mask that I provided, it's perfectly suitable. It can be used in a number of scenarios, but you can get interesting other effects if you provide your own artwork. So let me get to the file, the folder that has the artwork, and I'll explain the bits and pieces first so that you understand what's going on. So first of all, a dial timer, a dial of any kind like this that basically progresses from 0% to 100% is one of those sort of mysterious things that people try to do, and they're like, how do they have trouble wrapping their head around it. But when in fact it's very simple to achieve using masking. What you're seeing here is basically the green circle in the background in this moving bit is this image right here, back PNG, and it's just a white circle that I colorize. So that's the first layer of the dial. Then we have the dial portion itself, and what I've done is I've created a display group that contains, let me find it, this image. And what it is, it's half of a dial. It looks exactly the same as the last image. I just cut it in half, and I kept the left half. Then, because I put it in a group, what I did was I created a mask, and you'll see that the mask is basically the same exact artwork with a black background. So if you were to compare the last image I showed you, which was this half dial business, it's exactly the same image. What that allows me to do is I put the white image with the transparent portion here in a group at 0, 0, and I put a mask on the group. I create a mask and I set the mask on the group, and then as long as the image is within the mask area, you can see it. But if I rotate the image, what that effectively does is it takes part. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, I was trying to rotate there. If I take the image and I rotate it to the right, this portion right here on the right side gets masked off. So you're only going to be able to see 1/4 of the wedge. So the more I rotate it, the less of that wedge is available. And here's where the trick comes in. My dial is nothing more than two sets of groups where there's half of a wedge in one side, half of a wedge in the other side, and then I use a mask on one side, I use a mask on the other side, and I flip the x-axis of the mask so the other side is masked like this. So we have one side masked like this, one side masked like this, and then as I rotate each of the half wedges within their own groups, each of the groups being masked, it looks like the wedge is shrinking. Now, I'll demonstrate this by turning off the masking. So what I've done here is on line 48 of the code is where the set mask occurs for the left side. And then on line 63, where is it? The mask is set for the other side. So I turn off the masks. I'm going to reload this code. And now you can see what we've got here is two wedges that have been rotated. So if you look at the images on the top, it's clear to see that there are two wedges that are merely rotating. So first one wedge rotates and it stops. Then the next one rotates and it stops. And it's a little bit hard to see that. So let me turn off one wedge at a time. Turn off the right side. Now there's nothing going on, and then suddenly the wedge starts to rotate. Why does it rotate? Because there's a piece of code that says, oh, I got to the 50% mark, it's time to rotate the right wedge. So 0 to 50, rotate the left wedge, which seems counterintuitive. 50 to 100, rotate the right wedge. And that
I
really
like the way you're doing this because it's over my method that we discussed a few months ago. It's a lot fewer display objects, which is great.
But you'll still run into the issue of depth on groups, so you'll have to be careful if you're using a scroll view or any of the widgets like that. Inserting this might create too many layers of groups or too many masking layers.
Yeah, it's a maximum of 3, I believe.
Yeah. So
this uses 2 mask layers.
since you're already using 2 here, throwing it into a group or a scroll view might exceed your number of layers.
I've been thinking a lot about that, and I think actually that we are misinterpreting what that is.
Yeah, I think here you've only got 1 layer of depth on this because they're independent of one another.
It's per group. It's per group masking, and in which case I've only got 1 per group. So
Right now, the best solution for such sort of dial would be a custom shader. It would be, I think, easy to write in Corona.
It would be easy. Okay, I disagree with you. Maybe I'm not.
Yeah, this is a nice simple solution.
It would be easier if all you were doing was a base color and the dial color. But what you can't maybe see here is this also has an independent border, and you can add more content to the dial halves to give it all kinds of details. You could put more layers. What people could do here,
you can transform alpha channel in the shader.
No, okay. I challenge you, sir, to produce an example that I can look at. It's hard for me to say yes or no to that without.
No, I'm with both of you, believe it or not, because as I've been struggling with my own, where the problem with mine is, what I like about mine is it does dynamically generate a mask, which is great. You don't, as a packaged module, it's great because you just need this one little Lua file. But the problem with dynamically generating a mask is when you start getting into supporting multiple device resolutions and you're using dynamic scaling, all of a sudden, that divisible by 4 image that you've got is not necessarily exporting as masks have to be divisible by 4. There are very specific requirements for it, and it can be tricky device by device to ensure that it's always going to work when you're dynamically making that. And working with shaders is something that, if and when I find the time, I hope to sort of experiment with, because I think it could be a way of, again, still having a module that works without needing to include a PNG, but it's something I have not yet fully wrapped my brain around the concept of custom shaders yet, and I think that's my deficiency. I don't think it's terribly complicated. I just haven't put in the time yet.
I would have to. Go ahead.
That's not
Good code. I like it. I think it's a cool shader.
You would probably end up doing a different shader for each variation of the effect. You could add the border by doing a vertex shader that stretched the geometry out. Mm-hmm. And in the shader, you could draw a clear color on stuff you didn't want to appear. So it's doable. It's just you'd have to do one for each variation.
Yeah, I'm not going to say you couldn't do this with a shader. It's just that part of the problem here is
for most people, I think
basic usage of this example.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think for most people, shaders might be a little more advanced for them.
Another
This-
improvement that can you use in ads case is using very small rectangular mask, like I did in my dynamic mask example, but I did it I think 2 by 2 pixels, white rectangle, and you can make it just a half of it, so you can only 2 pixels are white and other 2 pixels are black, and you can scale it to the whole image, and it would look the same, almost.
I agree and I disagree. I used your technique, but I did not start small. I don't agree that you can create a round shape.
Yeah, no.
Not round,
Scale
only
appropriately
rectangle.
to a
You don't
large-
round.
Hey, Ed.
I did use. Hold on, just one second. I did use his technique, which is the setting and unsetting the magnification texture filter, because
Yeah.
that was absolutely required. Otherwise, you got a visual artifact on the scene.
Mm.
So, but go on. There was a question.
Oh yeah, no, it's more of a comment. I was going to say it's a cool little demo. I can't wait to download it.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
Good feedback. All right.
All right. Yeah. So this is just
I like
another way of doing it. There's a lot of solutions, and I just wanted. Somebody asked it. It was an interesting question, and the first time I saw the question, I was like, I'm not sure I could do that, because what they showed was this dial that had both a translucent segment, it had a non-translucent segment, it had a background image, it had a lot of different things going on. I was like, huh. And I was thinking in terms of Jason's his solution, where he basically creates wedges that are the dial segment wedges, and I was thinking, how would I create a multi-portion dial that has a translucent and a non-translucent part using the wedges technique? And then I said, you know what? Free your mind. Let's just back up for a minute and think about the mechanics of what's going on here. Yes, and then my head exploded. And after I cleaned that up, I thought, wait. This is really just 2 masks. And if we don't generate on the fly, then this is what we would do. And so it's something I think that a lot of people will be able to engage with once they get past perhaps my naming convention here. And they should be able to take and expand it to their own uses. And
Really
I think
cool.
that's going to leave us. That's good business. I knew I shouldn't have introduced it.
You open Pandora's box there. Hey, well, that's excellent. So we'll put a link in the show notes to it, and people can download it and play with it. If you guys come up with a shader version, I definitely would like to see that as well. I mean, shaders are definitely not something that I've played with. So, it might be a little more daunting to kind of go down that road, but we, all have. Well, I think we all have to. Well, I don't have to, but I think it would be good for us to kind of all become familiar with those things, because it seems like it's more and more of the conversation these days. So.
There's definitely some cool work being done with them.
Pixel camera.
Yeah. Yes, Pixel camera. We're going to get the link. Hey, I just wanted to say, Sergey and Steven, you guys have both been sort of leading the charge on putting stuff out on the thread there, and I definitely would like to see anything that has to do with a dial, because I'm still really not good at the whole shader thing, but I do want to learn more about it. So that'd be a nice connect for me, having sort of like the basis here and being able to say, aha, so that's what's going on. So.
Okay.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah. I'll have to definitely post some pictures of this. It's really cool. I like pixel camera. Hey, okay. So for next week, then, what are we gonna talk about? What do we had left to get out? We were gonna do. Huh?
What should we talk about?
Well, I think there was JSON data, and then there was extensions.
Yeah. So that discussion, the way that was supposed to go was, the basis of the discussion is how do you take what you've already got in Corona and Lua and change or extend it to meet your needs, which means, for example, take an existing piece of functionality in the table library or display library and replace it with your own while retaining the original functionality to use. Then taking that part of the discussion, move forward and say, how do I extend table to add an easy save load system followed by an easy persistence system. That is a system that allows me to set up default values for like game settings and initialize that and then change them over time and always get the current settings for my game.
All right, so let's do that. Let's do that next time then.
Do you have a module
So
drawn
we'll
up
do
for that already, Ed?
Sir?
Do you have a module already drawn up for that?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I've got one that I use for my own. I'll be curious to see yours because it might be an opportunity for me to improve on my own, which is great.
Well, each of us approaches it in a little different way. The thing with persisting data and setting defaults, I always find it to be a real challenge because if you know in advance that you're never going to change your default values or your default values, it's easy. But one of the things that I run into is I work with clients and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to release the app and we want the default coin count to be 100. And then they want to change their game later, like, okay, when somebody downloads it now, I want the default count to be 150.
Yeah.
And for the people who got it before, I want them to get 50 free extra coins. I'm like, oh, you do? That's great.
I mean, and there are ways of doing that. I certainly have, I set up a simple, for a client project, I set up something where there is the default, and I said to them, listen, here's a little JSON file. You can host it on your website. I put in a call when the app launches. It will go, it will look for this, it'll download that, and it'll update it to whatever. And, and the onus is on them. I say, you can change this text file. You put it here. Make sure this is the URL. And you can change that at will as you wish. Another interesting thing with settings and something that I learned that I didn't do properly for a while is when you're setting up that JSON table to make sure that you have a table entry for version number, because I realize when later on when you make an update, you want to be able to change things or not change things based on that.
And make it something that you can't forget to update.
Yeah.
So, as I've done many times, you go through all the work to do the change so that people can get a new version of the app, get the new features, but it's based on having the old version versus the new. Then you forgot to update it. You're like, oh wait, still version 125? Great.
Yeah. It's like you said though. I think this is something that we all sort of develop our own methods for handling. They're probably remarkably similar, but I think it'll be a good discussion because I think everybody has something to learn from other people's use cases.
Yeah, and the Graham Ransom guys at Glitch Games have their own solution too.
About not forgetting to change the version number, you can have two files. One is a JSON file and another file that holds version number, and you can concatenate version number with a JSON file name. So you create a new file name, JSON, and you don't delete the old version of the JSON, and you update the version number text file. What does it do is that you can easily roll back to your old version if you need to.
That's not, yeah. I never had to worry about going backwards, but if you did, it would be a pita. And I won't explain what pita is. You'll have to look it up on your own.
It's bread. You put stuff in it, and it's delicious.
Exactly, that's what it is.
UrbanDictionary.com. All right, guys. Well, there you go. We're going to leave it there. Next week we will talk about extensions, which will lead us into a conversation about loading and saving JSON data, and then we'll talk about button persistence.
Yeah, well, it's all wrapped up in the same kind of discussion.
Okay. And then if we have some time, we'll watch some cat videos on YouTube together.
Hey! That's it. I'm going to disable that feature. I'm sorry.
All right, guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us and spending some time with us and having some laughs. And we'll be here next Monday at 12 p.m. Pacific to talk all about mobile app development using Corona SDK. Until then, have a great week and happy coding.
Goodbye.
No, you have to speak in Russian, Sergey.